Bava Metzia, page 47, we'll start on page 46b, 13 lines from the bottom of the page. Thank you. I want to take this opportunity from time to time to thank all the people who both email, text, call with beautiful questions. Thank you. God bless. Story. A fellow owns a retail store, grocery and retail store in Brooklyn, New York. And all of a sudden, one day, a well-respected rabbi and scholar that tremendously respected in the community, you walk in the store. So the owner saw him carrying, having a card. He was, right away, can you get in help? Some people can help you doing things, carrying. So we thought that somebody else will buy for you. To make long story short, that well-respected rabbi purchased for a couple of $100 a card of product, but he wasn't done. He gave him the final list, and he was about to pay. Since it was too large card, and the man was not a young man, so he asked the owner, let's start making a cheshbon, a calculation, how much is it? So the owner looked at him and said, look, I don't know what to say to you. Whatever it is, pay. He said, no, absolutely not. Make the numbers, tell me how much is together and how much I owe you. Back and forth, back and forth. Eventually the owner said, listen, Rabbi, here's the deal. You open your wallet, you open your pocket, pull out whatever it is, give it to me, and it's a done deal. So the rabbi was with a very large box of quarters and whatever it is. So he just dig in, took a big part, and he gave it to him. The owner said, this is a sacred money for me. Don't worry, leave these two cards. I send people to deliver to you. Don't worry. Goodbye, Rabbi. So the rabbi left. A couple of hours passed by. Evening, almost the end of the day. Nothing. Pick up the phone, he called the owner. Couldn't reach him. They closed the store, he called him the next day. To make long story short, the owner took one of those people who, I'm not so sure if they're legal or not, but one of those guys, a family man, and instead of deliver that two cards in his car to that scholar, he disappeared with everything. Not just that, the owner could not catch him, he doesn't have his address, he doesn't know where is he. Done. All the product which have a value of a couple of $100 is gone. Now the question is, what do? We need our daf today. It's fascinating daf, page 47, the end of 46 and 47, Bava Metzia. They're dealing with situation like that. Does the owner have the obligation to provide the entire list that the rabbi purchased? Or, I'm not talking about generous heart, I'm talking about halachically, legal Jewish law terms. What exactly the maaseh kinyan, the transactions between parties? Because we learn several times that just by giving kesef, by giving the money without pulling, it's not the final stage. The idea is, if it was a regular situation, he said, let's say it's $240, and the rabbi paid him $240, then it's basically simple case. But since he said, your money is sacred for me, Rabbi pulled, and he just gave him bunch of coins, is that considering maaseh kinyan or not? And obviously there is a way more to that. So today we're going to deal with the essence, with the yesodot of those halachot, why on the surface a regular business transaction you cannot do in a grocery store, just as we said, simply speaking, you get the milk and you pay cash. Or if we talk a little more, if it's under the chuppah canopy, time of marriage, final stage of the wedding, so everything was organized, the flowers, the chuppah canopy and everything else, and all of a sudden they cannot find the girdle or the handkerchief or whatever it is, they couldn't. So they go around, they need to search for some kinyan, and all of a sudden there is an elderly person there. So he says, oh, you have an handkerchief, give it to him. He says, no, I can't give it to you. Why? It's dirty, it's not clean. Can we use that? The camera can switch, so cannot see it, but the question is, can the chassan take that dirty piece of clothing and use it for Maaseh Kinyan? Furthermore, we are now in a season that soon will be Pesach, B'ezrat Hashem. So a fellow go to a store and he wants to buy matzot, but le'ela or le'ela. He wants to get the high quality of matzot. So he said, I want to give you the money to secure. The question is that secure if he leave money in exchange, because that's not the manufacturer, it's just the store. He said, I want X amount of boxes, let's say, I want 8 pound matzot, I'm willing to give you here $1,000 for that. Does that mean that he's already the owner of the upcoming matzot or not? Because so far what we learned that in the money itself, it's not the final Maaseh Kinyan. We learned that you need to have hagbaha, you need to lift up the item. So the fellow said, all right, here I give you $1,000, lift it up. So here is the big question. If you tell me that you use mitpachat, you use girdle, handkerchief, and you lift it up, then you have Maaseh Kinyan. But can you do that with money? So here we enter the machloket, the disputation in this upcoming sugya between the Rav and Levi. The question is, can we have the whole idea of mitzvat chalipin, of exchange, using matbea, using type of coin? And here we are, 13 lines from the bottom of the page. Tnan, we learned in the Mishnah. Kol ha-metaltelin konin ze et ze. Here it's a big chidush. They said all form of movable property, each acquires the property of the other. So here is a big chidush. Here is a very important point. Namely, that if a fellow goes to, I'm just using a term of modern days, a fellow go to a money changer and he said, guess what, we're getting close to let's say Purim, and I have the honor and the pleasure every year to give away a lot of machzit shekel, a lot of quarters to people. They're standing in line and they give it for different machzit shekel. So you know me, the money exchanger, know him for many years. He said, okay, I don't have anything on me, I don't have my checkbooks, whatever it is, I don't have it on me. I need at this point $10,000 value of coins that you, the money changer, give me, and I'm going from here to the shul, and I'm going to disperse it for all the people who needs machzit shekel before Purim. So give me coins that value of 10,000. I'll pay you soon after Purim. You know me for many years. I'll go and pay you. So now you have the purchaser, meaning the one who acquired that coins. He is taking it and he's doing kinyan akbai, lifted, And by doing so, you have ma'aseh kinyan, an act of transactions, that he do with the changer, money changer, with kinyan chalifin, with an exchange. So here is the Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish come here with a fascinating point of view, and he said, "Va'afilu kis male ma'ot, bechis male ma'ot." Here Reish Lakish said, if a person come to purchase money in exchange of money, that by having the purchaser doing hagbaha, lifting up the money, it's ma'aseh kinyan bar tokef, it's really act of acquisition, and therefore, since we talk about matbeot, about coins, we're not talking about price. Now, tirgema Rav Acha. So what we understand so far, that matbea koneh chalifin, that coin can do an act of an exchange, both purchase and koneh v'nikna. Tirgema Rav Acha בדינר ענקה ועניגרה, אחד שפסלתו מלכות ואחד שפסלתו מדינה. So here he said, you know what, we are dealing here with coin that's called in Ivrit lo schirim, which means with samech, meaning that those coins are not a probable of exchange. Like in Israel in the past it was a coin like a lira, or a coin that used in an old telephone, a simon, all kind of coins that no longer in use. So there are different terms of coins. There are coins that the government or the kingdom decided in a specific location, specific country, and they're not using. That's one way. Another way is that they don't use it everywhere. Another option, that some faraway villages or whatever it is, they are still respect and use those coin, those money. So he said here it can be that the king decree that you cannot do any money exchange with that money, or the people in the country by themselves, not because it's a government order, they themselves decided they're not going to use it. So since it was in that exchange some coins that not valid, so therefore it's considering as a part of other mטלטלין, of other movable object. Utzricha. So the chidush here, the novelty is that both of them do not considering as a matbea. It's called mutzar, it's called item, it's not matbea. And therefore you cannot learn from one to another. De'i ashmuinan psaltu malchut klal, mishum de lo sage klal. You can say that it's considering as a movable object because it's it's not accepted anywhere after the king or the government decided that they not use those coins anymore. But if in this particular country or provinces it's not accepted, but other places they do accept that, you may say that it's still considering a currency. So you know, if you travel worldwide, you see in different airports, they have a list of currency that they accept and other currency they do not accept. So therefore, if you go to South Africa, they have a currencies with a long list, including even shekel. I saw in South Africa when I was in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, I saw that they have on the list Israeli shekel, an example. You have countries in Europe that only accept yen and euro and dollar. So, and other currencies not. So here the point is, if you can argue and say that in some countries it's still accepted, you still say that it's considering as a currency, so that's based on the Mishnah. We said that in currency cannot be in exchange. Which means that it's by the government, it's disqualified, because everybody despises that coin. They don't want to use it anymore, neither in public, not under the table, no way. בעברית we said, מתחת לבלטות, you know, in the combina in a secret way, in all kind of ideas together, so that nobody like it. אבל פסלתו מלכות דסגלה בצנעה, אימה הקטי מטבעו. But if you tell me that if it's because of the government, the kingdom invalidated, which could circulate in private, say that its legal status is still that of a coin, and money cannot be acquired by means of transaction of exchange, ואין מטבע נקנה בחליפין, כמה שמלן, so צריכה, so we derive from that, it's necessary to teach the halacha in both cases, that both of them is not considering a matbea, and therefore you can acquire them by kinyan chalifin. So now the Gemara brings a ruling of Rav Huna. We're going back to the story we mentioned earlier with the grocery store, and just to understand the depth of that case. It's not that the seller of the store told the rabbi, give me X amount of money. He said to him, your money is kadosh, your money is sacred, Rabbi. Just, if you wish, just can put your hands and pull out some of that. So he take out, like in the Hasidic world, you go to a teach, so they disperse arbes, people jump and take bag of arbes, So he just dig in and pull out coins to be used. So Amar Rav Huna, here Rabbah says, that Rav Huna says, if one says to another, Mechor li be'elu kana, sell me your item for these coins that are in my hand, and when taking the money, the owner of the item did not determine the sum. So the buyer acquires the article and the transaction is complete, and neither can renege of the deal. Mechor li be'elu kana. Page 47. ויש לו עליו הונאה. So the seller has some type of exploitation against the buyer. Let's understand it. In the first scenario, we use an introduction. You have such a great, important person that visits your store. Obviously, it raised the value and the trust and the connection, relationship with customers. So obviously, it's kind of exception. So let's put that scenario for a moment aside and see the way the Rashi explained to us. A little different scenario, but the concept is very important. It's called shtut and hona'ah. Shtut with taf. Shin taf, vav taf. When we have a relationship between seller and buyer, we need to search deeply and understand what is in the mindset of each party. Why is that? Because when we're referring to this type of interaction, meaning what the seller understands and what the buyer understood, and the way they interact, we want to make sure that no one take advantage of the other party. We also, by Torah law, limited the amount of taking benefit from the deal, which is restricted to shtut, to 1/6, and that's again, it's not for now, but the key is when we have two people, again we are just using name, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven sell a product to Shimon. Shimon pay for that product to Reuven. We have two parties that exchange something. We soon you see, as long as Reuven do not really care of the exact amount, that's a total understanding and total scenario and total consequences that goes different direction. However, if Reuven said to Shimon, Here you want, let's talk simple, a bottle of milk. And Shimon said, I want to buy this milk. Let's say it's a farm milk. And let's say that that farm milk worth $10, $10. And Reuven said to Shimon, I'm busy, I have customer, you want just one bottle of organic milk? You know, you have a bag full of coins. You know, pull in, give me whatever it is, and let's move on, I have things to do. What exactly transpired here? Because if really later on, Reuven go and sit for an hour and count every nickel and dime there, and it turns to be, instead of $10, $5. And Reuven cared that he did not receive the amount he expected, because he may figure out, I will get either at least $10 or maybe $9.50 for this. He did not figure out that what Shimon hold in his pocket, big box of coins, it's only worth about $5. So here you can say that, guess what? It's no longer kinyan chalifim, it's no longer exchange between the parties. Furthermore, if Shimon only paid, as we learned earlier, and he did not pull out the bottle of milk, what we said so far, that it's not a final stage because it wasn't kinyan meshicha, it wasn't act of pulling. Now, with that said, we need to know something that in Mitzvah Shem we're going to study on page 49, which is to know, to dig in the mindset of the seller. If we put it together in a form of shtut, as we said, shtut is the assumption to 1/6. So if the product was $6, we assume that the whole law of exploitation, of hona'ah, applies when the seller receives no less than 5 out of 6 of the value. Meaning if it's a $6, the seller receives at least $5. If you receive less than shtut, less than shishit, less than one of the 6, then we enter now to a problem which is exploitations. So therefore, Rav Huna expand on his ruling and he said, Kana af al gav de lo mashach, keivan de lo kaped kana. Meaning, the buyer acquires the item even though he did not pull it. Meaning, the seller, as we said, did not check at that moment the exact amount that the buyer carries. He didn't check it. And he has gilui dat, meaning he has a mindset that he wants to do the deal with kinyan chalifin, of exchange, not by kesef. So it means, in the first mindset, kinyan chalifin, that the seller do not really care for the exact. So if it was a value of $6 and he get 5.25 or 5.5 or 5.8 or 6, he doesn't really care. That's what we said. The moment he start counting and the moment he cares to get the value, he can come back the seller and said, oh, if that's the case, it wasn't in my intent to sell it. I was so sure that what he is doing, he is giving me at least or about the least of the amount that it's the face value which I sell to everybody else. So they said here, Kana afal gav de lo mashach, keivan de lo kaped kana. So as long the seller is not particular about the sum, then the buyer, the item, acquire the item, because it's similar to transaction, affected by exchange, meaning of exchange. דכי חליפין דמי ויש לו עליו הונאה. So therefore, the seller can have a claim of type of exploitations because דמחו לי באלו כאמר לי. Because what did he said to him? He said, he said, sell me your item on these coins. So it means, Rashi explained to us, look at Rashi, 3 lines from the top of the page, לשון ממכר ולא לשון חליפין. Meaning that when you have an exchange, imagine a customer walk in your store and says, I have this bag of coins. I want this organic bottle of milk. Is that okay? I give you this? Now the question is, what do you have in your mind as a seller? If you tell me that you figured out, you know what, take that bottle, give me whatever it is, goodbye. One thing, like the story with the big important man that walked in the store. But if you have in your mind as a seller that what he have in his pocket, it has at least 5 of the 6 of the values, then is no longer kinyan khalifin, is no longer exchange. Another version of that, Rav Abba Amar Rav Huna, some say that he disputed, and what did he say? If a fellow hold in his hand pocket of coin, and he said, Mechor li be'elu, if he said to him, sell me this item for this packet, and the seller said, okay, kana ve'en lo alav ona'ah. So it means the moment he used the term mechorli, sell me, what does that mean, sell me? Since we assume the seller is not makpid, is not, Ritva explained, is not so strict or greedy or particular, or whatever you use the word, that he is not caring for the exact less penny or less nickel, we assume that he doesn't really care. He take it, let's move on and continue on, right? And the truth is a discussion among the poskim, among the great rabbis, to this very day. They hold, when it's come to mechira, act of sales and buy, you can say that is potential for exploitations, because it's an act of framework of sales. But if it's exchange, there is a big question, because the Torah used the term v'chitim kiru mimkar la'amitecha o kano miyad amitecha al tonu. So that's applied davka b'mchira, specifically in an act of sale. If it's an act of exchange, there is a strong notion of the rabbis that say that that's not something that the seller can come back tomorrow and say, hey, you didn't pay me whatever I asked for. The Gemara further on said, after they analyzing this halachot, they said, pshita, it's obvious that in a case where the sale of an item for money and the seller is not particular about the sign, so we understand damim ve'en makpid alev. The seller doesn't care for counting it. Haka amrina dekani dechalifin damu. Dechalifin damu. That's basically the same as we exchange. You said this is a value of so and so. I said I have this, and we exchange. Soon you see, it's like changing cow with a donkey, right? We're changing something in exchange. It's a value of 1,000, a value of 1,000. You take this item, I take that item, right? Chalifin umakpid alehem mai. But what do you do in a situation when the transaction is by means of exchange, and one of the parties particular that the value of the item is equal? Mai. Are you treated as a regular matter of exchange, or you said no, he needs to poll? You said that it's have a regular legal status of a sale, or you set a transaction effect by means of exchange. Excuse me, and therefore you need to pull. So the Gemara tried to elaborate and make it clearer and lucider by explaining to us the act of barter. And the barter, in some ways to this very day you see it. I just read an article about the Israelis and United States. It's an old claim that United States support Israel defense, and it's a strong claim that said that it's exchange of is like barter. One party gives certain amount of defense need, another party exchange for defense needs. So it's basically not really supporting, is an act of exchange in values. Why are we saying that? It's said, Amara v'ada barava tashma, come and I bring you a proof from a Braita. הרי שהיה תופס פרתו ועומד, ובא חברו ואמר לו, פרתך למה? So, yes, that's ancient time, but we can see tons of application to these days. Use a different name. Abraham is standing in a shuk, in a market, and he stands next to his cow, valuable cow. Yitzchak walked in the shuk, the market, and he said, you cow, how much is it? He said to him, listen, I need a donkey. I need some walking donkey. That's in those days. He says, לחמור אני צריך. My mindset, it's not how much this cow worth. Let's use numbers. $2,000, okay? I need donkey. Yitzchak said to Abraham, יש לי חמור שאני נותן לך, פרתך בכמה? I have a donkey, I can do exchange. I have a donkey, I can give you your donkey, my donkey, and I take you cow. How much you want? It says, bekach vechach. The value is, for our discussion, he said to him, let's use numbers, $2,000. So he said, chamorcha bekama, how much you want to get for your donkey? He says, bekach vechach, 2,000. משך בעל החמור את הפרה, ולא הספיק בעל הפרה למשוך את החמור עד שמת החמור. So, guess what happened? Yitzchak come with the donkey, and Avram have the cow. Now what happened? Yitzchak pull out the cow, so now Yitzchak have the cow, and guess what happened? Abraham didn't get a chance to pull the donkey of Yitzchak. Why? Because the donkey passed away. So the Gemara said, לא קנה בעל החמור את הפרה. So now Yitzchak did not acquire the cow. Yes, you pulled it, you did maaseh kinyan, but since it was depend on the other party that he did not complete his pulling, so the action is not applicable. Now the rabbis expanded that beautifully. They said, here we are not in a regular situation of exchange. We're in a situation that each side is very particular to get their 2,000. Meaning they are very caring of the amount of the money. Meaning, in order to complete this action, you need to be in a situation that each party receive what exactly in their mindset they have. The Rambam in Yad HaChazakah explained to us. Let's talk super simple. You walk in a city, you come out of a subway, and all of a sudden it's a pouring rain, unbelievable pouring rain, which happened to me and I'm sure happened to many New Yorker and others. So you walk in the store, they're selling umbrella. Now what's the situation? In a regular day, they can sell you the umbrella for $5 a piece. But the seller whatever is he from, Asia or whatever it is, he look around and he see was tutzich, and there's a line of people that waiting to get umbrella, and he said, you can get umbrella starting price $15. And you know that this guy even have a sign outside, umbrella for $5. But you give him the $15. Why? Because you have an important appointment and you need umbrella right away, right? So what do? The Rambam said, you go and you pay this crazy price of $15 for a little umbrella. The same with the cow, the Rambam said. It can be circumstance that one wants a particular cow, particular item, modern days, particular electronic, whatever it is. You're willing to pay more for that motag, for that company, for that item, for that. So therefore, you figure out it's worth it for me to give my donkey for this type of cow, right? So even I have an expensive car or expensive whatever it is, it's worth it for me to give my donkey for this particular cow that I was waiting for a long time to get. So it can be that. So therefore, Shma mina chalifin umakpid alehem lo kana. This is fascinating. What does that mean? That when the transaction affected by means of exchange and one of the parties is particular that the value of the item is equal, he does not acquire the item immediately. That's the opposite to what we learned earlier, the case of exchange. The owner of the cow and donkey assess the value of the animal before the transaction. Since they are particular about the price, the acquisition is not completed until each pulls the item he is acquiring. The Gemara rejected that. Amar Rava, what's wrong? Atu chalifin b'shuftanei askinan. What do you mean? When you have an exchange between two parties, you think they are idiots? They think people are total fool and morons? That people exchange the low kapdei? That they're not particular of the value, what they get for what? It's like think together with me. If you have a handkerchief or anything else, do you really think that they take just the handkerchief and they think, oh, that's the value of whatever it is, selling the chometz or whatever it is that... Obviously, people, ela, for sure, kol chalifin mikpad kapdei vekana. Meaning people are particular, people are not stupid, people are particular to get the value of the item they are paying for. And because of that, the idea that you do have a transactions, especially since those parties will close the deal in advance, so therefore you go by this notion that kinyan chalifin, that exchange, apply when? Even when they are strict and particular about the value. So therefore, if you ask v'hacha b'may askinan, what exactly the scenario that we said that the transaction is still not complete and it's not accepted? Here is the scenario. Listen, it's fascinating, it's beautiful, it's applicable. Listen carefully. The Amar Lei, go ancient time and could take tons of applications. The owner of the donkey said the owner of the cow. Listen what he said to him. Chamor bepara v'taleh. You have a cow. You're standing there in a shuk with the cow, and the value of the cow is $2,000. I have a donkey, and the donkey's value is $1,300. But I have also a lamb, and my lamb worth $700. So what I'm going to do, you need a donkey, but I can give you donkey and a lamb. They are together the value of what? Of $2,000. And I'm going to give you them, the lamb and a donkey, in exchange of taking your cow. So what happened here? Umashach et הפרה ועדיין לא משach et הטלה. I'm sorry, they use here donkey and cow and lamb. But the key is one party is 2,000, I'm just using numbers, and the other one is 1,300 plus 700, okay? So they said here, הוא משך את הפרה, ועדיין לא משך את הטלה. So it happens here that Abraham, let's say, use the real example in the Gemara. Abraham owns the donkey. The donkey worth 2,000. Yitzchak come in with the cow that worth 1,300 and the lamb that worth 1,700. And what exactly happened? Abraham pulled out the cow that worth 1,300, but he didn't pull the lamb. And therefore the lo havalei meshicha me'aliyah. So he does not perform a proper act of pulling. Why? Because it was not shalem, it was not complete. It's not, the Ritva explained that in order to do a complete transaction, since one party giving one item in exchange of the second party that giving two items, as long as the party that give one item did not pull both items, you do not have a complete act of transactions. That the Ritva explained. You see a discussion among the rabbis, you see it in the great Shvut Yaakov and other great rabbis that explain to us when, let's say, a situation that a fellow, let's use a name, Jewish name, common Jewish name, Marvin. And Marvin ordered from a company 1,000 boxes of, let's say, containers of something. And all of a sudden he received 1,000 boxes, but unfortunately 200 out of 1,000 contained a defect. Now here is the problem. Marvin come to the Bet Din, he come to the seller, and he said to that company, listen guys, I asked for 1,000, I pay for 1,000, excuse me, I did not get 1,000, take it back, no deal. Meaning either 1,000 or nothing. The company come back and they said, wait a second, do you agree, Marvin, that you receive 800 exactly the way you wanted? We are going to charge you for the 800 and the 200 on our cost you return or trash it or take it. But we have a sale of 800. Who is right here? Marvin said, I make a deal over 1,000, otherwise I don't want to deal with this company. The seller said, listen, it is true that we did not deliver 100% 1,000 boxes, but 800 was good. It's a dispute among the rabbis based on our sugya, if you have a deal or you don't have a deal. There are those, like the Shvut Yaakov and others, say that it's no deal, that Marvin has the right to return all of them and nothing happened, it's all null and void. There are others who say that, listen, since he get 800 good and they charge him only for 800, it is partially a deal. It's a discussion based on our sugya. It's not as simple as it sounds like. Because, based on what happened here with the concept of Meshicha Me'aliyah or not. But anyway, we go back to our sugya. Amar mar mechor li be'elu kana, mechor li be'elu kana, יש לו עליו הונאה, למה סבר אבונה מטבע נעשה חליפין. Here, Rashi explained that because if a person hold in his hand amount of money and he said, sell me your item for this coin, so the buyer acquired that article, if the sum of the money is 1/6 lower than the value of the item, as we said, shtut, the seller of the item has a claim of exploitation against the buyer. So what we see, that what Rav Huna hold, that coin may be an item used in a fixed exchange. Mar rejected that and said, Rav Huna savar lak Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Huna hold as Rabbi Yochanan said, דאמר דבר תורה מאות קונות. He says, by the Torah law, money effect acquisition. Rashi here have a problem. What exactly you meant to say that he holds the Rabbi Yochanan, and what exactly you meant to say Ma'ot Konot Var Torah? So Rashi said Klomar, I think that's what bothered him. Ein matbea na'asa chalifin. But soon you see, it can go in different ways what Rashi meant here, but let's continue a little bit. ומפני מה אמרו משיכה קונה, גזירה שמא יאמר לו נשרפו חתיך בעלייה. As we mentioned earlier, the reason that we said that pulling is affected, that's rabbinic enactment, that a fellow do not care after he gets the payment for the other side's, the buyer estate, since he said, I don't care, it's not my responsibility, I get my payment. So therefore, the sages said that the merchandise is still belong to the seller and is not a complete act of transaction until the buyer pull out the items. And therefore we explain the reasoning of Rav Huna. Milta de shchicha gazru Rabbanan, or milta de lo shchicha lo gazru Rabbanan. The sages come out and say that something that it's more a common, so the sages issue a decree, but something is uncommon, the sages not put a decree. So when you have the situation that is no rabbinic decree, and the transaction is governed by Torah law. Amar le Marbray, soon we explain a little more on this. Amar le Marhun Abrei de Rav Nachman Ravashi, Atu nachem matnitula, Ata nachem matnitana, v'chen amar Ravuna en matbea nasa chalifin. So let's start with the Rambam. The Rambam in the Yad HaChazakah explained to us that as long as it's not davar mushlam, as long as it's not a complete transaction, it's called avada erech. It doesn't carry its value. Because if, for example, a person have in his mind the value tzurat hamatbea, the value of the currency or the value of the money, if, like the cases we mentioned in the previous dapim, that is governed by the current government or king and can be changed, so then the value can change. If one party have it concealed, the other party did not see it, so you can say that matbea nikne b'chalifin, that you can go by the exchange while the other did not see it, like the story of pull out the money or whatever it is. But otherwise, it's a question. But let's expand a little bit on that and use the example you see the Gemara in Kiddushin a lot, Gittin and others. You have the Chassan and Kala. You have the groom and the bride. So the groom needs to have kinyan ktuba. He needs to have ma'aseh kinyan, needs to have, as we explained several times, an act of transaction in order to make the ktuba effective. So what did he do? He take mitpachat, he take a handkerchief, and he magbia, and he lifted it. Now let's think together. What do you do if, for example, you have a situation that the groom receive that mitpacha, that handkerchief from the Eidim, from the witnesses, that they are basically represent who? The bride, the Kala. And he is doing Agbahat mitpachat, he lift up the handkerchief, and by doing so, he have Aknayat Aktuba, he have the fulfillment of Ktuba. What do you do? The rabbis ask, if he said, this handkerchief, give me something at value of the ketubah. I commit myself in ketubah for $18,000, high, right? Give me a piece of diamond and jewelry that has the value of $18,000. So you have a real exchange. What do? Maybe he meant to say kinyan kesef, not kinyan chalifin, because he's really talking about values, ketubah values, in exchange of you give me a piece of jewelry that have that value. So that's the dynamic here, what exactly take place. But now, lack of time, and obviously it's much more to discuss, is the idea of kinyan sudar, which means that you use some vessel. The Gemara asks, Bame konim, what exactly you have the transaction between two parties whose vessel is used in order to effect that symbolic transactions. As we said, handkerchief, we all know that handkerchief worth maybe $2, yeah, right? The whole source of the book of Ruth, chapter 4, that they use the shoe, etc., that can be a foundation for our discussion, Rashi said, that he pull out the shoe and he give it to the other. So he carry value. Amarav bechelio shel koneh, denicha lelekone, deleheve makne koneh, k'diechel ligmar velikne lei. ולוי אמר בכלו של מקנה, כדבעין למימר לקמן. So here you see a disputation between Rav and Levi. What exactly happens here? If you said that the vessel of one who acquiring the item, so he giving the item to the owner, as we said, the Chatan lift up the handkerchief that he received from the witnesses of that represent the Kala, the bride. So Rav explained that one acquiring the item is amendable to having the one transaction ownership of the item acquired his vessel, so that he will resolve the transaction ownership to him. Levi said the affection of the transaction is by having the one acquiring the item pull the vessels of the one transferring ownership, and he go further to explain. Mar le Rav Huna mid Karta lerava. Ulelevi, according to the view of Levi, the Amar bechelio shel makne, that he said that one affects transaction with the vessel of one who transferring ownership. We have an issue with that. Ha kakanei ar'a agav glima. So you tell me that you're acquiring land by means of a cloth. Think about it. What exactly you tell me? We know that the property you cannot pull, right? So what do you do basically? You do by pulling a kinyan agav, that by the way you acquire something else by doing so and so. So he said to him, אם כן הבו לנכסים שיש להם אחריות ונקנים נכסים שאין להם אחריות. וענה נפחת נא נכסים שאין להם אחריות, נקנים נכסים שיש להם אחריות. There is a well-known Gemara in Kiddushin that we study on page 26 that said that property is not guarantee, is acquired with property that is guaranteed, which is land. Meaning by means of transaction performed on the land. So how come you tell me that it can be? Amar lei, Iava Levi Acha, Hava Mapik Leapach Pulsei Denua. If Levi was here, we will let you have it. He take your rods on fire before you and flog you with this type of question. Meaning, Misavat Glimau, Maknela Bayana Adam, Kabel Minei, Gamar Ve'aklelei. Kabbalah speak about Pulsat Nua, which obviously it's different meaning, but here we present example of Gemara in Kiddushin, page 7, that a person can betroth a woman with this type of hana'ah, that he agreed to receive that gift, and it's like he gave her shvet pruta, and you hear that from me a lot, that you see a rabbi standing under the chuppah, and they call the two witnesses and the groom, and we all think that they are joking, but they are not. They take the ring, and they said, are you honored the ring? You have a receipt? You bought it? Oh, witnesses, how much you think that ring worth? And everybody laughing, but it's nothing to laugh, because the concept is it has to have value, X amount, but has to carry value. So therefore, what we said here, you see it more in Tosfot in Tractate Gittin. Tosfot in Gittin speaks about Kinyan Khalifin, that it returned to the owner of the vessel. It all depends, because when one connect kli shel a kinyan, one do the act of transaction by a vessel of the purchaser. So if, according to Levi, Hana'a Kona, just driving benefit, driving joy, so therefore the kli, the vessel, is not returned. Reuven, if he borrow money from Shimon, so he cannot give Shimon, it's repeat, any gift upon returning the item, right? That's what Rabbi Akiva Eiger added to our sugya, and explained that we have to define Hana'ah, because if Reuven lent to Shimon, let's say $1,000, and now Reuven has, let's say, Simcha, and Shimon returned the $1,000 and also give him another $100 for his Simcha. It's not so simple if it happens to coincide the same time, according to Rabbi Akiva Eiger, to based on our sugya, to have it. Why? Because it's not just the domain of rebit, it's the whole concept of what exactly happened in the exchange of the two parties, ketanae. The question is based on what we learn in the book of Ruth, chapter 4, verse 7. וזאת לפנים בישראל על הגאולה ועל התמורה לקיים כל דבר שעליו ישנה לו ונתן לרעהו. The verse said, and I'm just reading the translation, now this was the custom in a former time in Israel, concerning redemption and concerning substitution, to confirm all matters, a man drew off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor. So what we have here, גאולה זו מחירה, וכן אומר לו יגאל, תמורה זו חליפין, וכן אומר לו יחליפנו ולא ימיר אותו, לקיים כל דבר שלף ישנאו ונתן לרעהו, מי נתן למי? בועז נתן לגואל. Boaz, in the scenario of the book of Ruth, in the story, he gave it to the Goel, can be Tov, can be whatever it is, the Redeemer. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Goel natan leBoaz. Rabbi Yehuda said, no, it's the opposite. The Redeemer gave the shoe to Boaz. So dispute between Rabbi and Levi is parallel to the dispute between the first Tana and Rabbi Yehuda. Hamabit, it's a great Shelot v'Tshuvot response of the Mabit. He hold that Kinyan Chalifim is midoraita. It's a biblical, the exchange. Why? Because he said the source, it said here, Vezot lefanim Yisrael. So he said, Me'az she Yisrael niya le'am. From the time that the nation of Israel being structured as a nation, so he saw that Chalifin is deoraita. Anyway, that's the Mabit, Beit on our Sugya. Tana, konim bikli, afal bishen bo shve pruta. So we learn one braita, that we can have the acquired property through a symbolic exchange by using a vessel. Even it doesn't have the value of pruta. Pruta is the minimum. It can be like needle, whatever it is, small amount. אמר רב נחמן לא שונה בכלי אבל בפירה לא. רב ששת אמר אפילו בפירות. Nachman said no, that's not apply to produce. And Rav Sheshet said yes, it's symbolic exchange can be affected even with produce. מה התעמד רב נחמן? אמר כאן נעלו נעל in מידיחין עלו. They specifically have to be shoe. מה התעמד רב ששת? אמר קרא לקיים כל דבר. Even it's not a vessel. ורב נחמן הכתיב לקיים כל דבר, ראו לקיים כל דבר דנקנים במנהל. ורב ששת נמי הכתיב נעלו, אמר לך רב ששת, מה נעלו דבר מסוים, אף כל דבר מסוים, לאפוק חצי רימון וחצי אגוז דלא. So that you can take out, exclude half of pomegranate and half of nut, which cannot affect the symbolic exchange. The whole pomegranate or nut can be used for that purpose. אמר רב ששת ברד רבידי, כמן כתבינה נעידנה, במנה דקשר למקניה בי. That's important. You write it in a vessel that fits to acquire item with it. במנה לאפוקה מדרב ששת, ואמר קונים בפירות. That to exclude the view of Rav Sheshet, to say that one acquires an item through a transaction of a symbolic exchange by using produce. דחשר לאפוקה מדשמואל, ואמר קונים. So what is fit, it serves to exclude the view of Shmuel, who says, one acquire item, page 47b, bimroka. That's a date pit that use it to clean parchment. Lemikniya la'apukim de Levi, they require to serve to exclude the view of Levi. דאמר בחליו של מקנה, כמשמע למקנייה ולא לקנוי. בי רב פאפ אמר למהות המטבע, to exclude a coin, because it cannot affect a symbolic exchange. ורב זביד ויתם רבה שאמר למהות איסורי הנאה, something that derived benefit is prohibited. איקרא אמרי בה אמר רב פאפא למהות המטבע, דחשר אמר רב זביד ויתם רבה שלמהות האיסורי הנאה, אבל מוריקה לא הצריך. Next. Continue with the Mishnah originally at page 44, הסימון קונה מטבע. We learn that when one party takes a possession of an asimon, the other party acquire a minted coin. מהי הסימון? המעות הנתונות בסימן לבית המרחץ. In those days they need to use the bathhouse, so they use that asimon to enter the bathhouse. מייטי ואין מחללים מעשר שנים על האסימון ולא על ידי המעות הנתונות בסימן לבית המרחץ. Would not redeem, desacralizes second type product neither with a simon nor with one the coin that giving token is gain entry into the bathhouse. בכלל להסימון לאו מעות. From here you derive that סימון לאו מעות הניתנות בסימן לבית המרחץ. That's the opposite of what we said. וחיתם הפירוש שכמפרש ועל התנא אחי מחללים מעשר שני על הסימון דברי רבי דוסה וחמור ואין מחללים ושווים שהם מחללים על מעות הניתנות בסימן לבית המרחץ, which means that הסימון is something different. ואז רבי יוחנן תמי, דאמר רבי יוחנן רבי יוסף ורבי ישמעאל אמרו דבר אחד, רבי יוסף עד המרן, which means that you can desacralize second type for הסימון. רבי ישמעאל מאי דתניא, וצרת הכסף בידיך. The pasuk, the verse said in דברים, chapter 14, you shall, וצרת הכסף בידיך. וצרת, meaning, and you shall bind up the money in your hand. So even אפילו מטבע בלי צורה, even the coin that doesn't carry that sign, לרבות כל הדבר הנצרר ביד, to include any type of money that is bound in one hand, which is that has a monetary value. דברי רבי ישמעאל, רבי עקיבא אומר, לרבות כל דבר שיש עליו צורה, that include any type of money that has imprint. So meaning Rabbi Akiva hold that you need a minted coin in order to desacralize second type produce coin. Bishmel hold that the blank can be used as well. So Migdolei Zmanenu, the greatest rabbis in our days, have a question. If someone have a Pidyon Maaser Sheni, a second type, and that person is not in Eretz Israel, in Eretz Israel we use Puta Chamura. But if he's not in Eretz Israel and he wants to use money that they don't have a currency exchange in Israel, so they hold that you cannot have if shalif dot, you cannot have the exchange of Maaser Sheni. I would like to conclude with a well-known Rabbi Ber. Rabbi Ber said the name of the Reb Chaim. The Rambam asked a question that if you have a young boy, meaning he is very young, let's say 6 years old, 7 years old, something like that, far away from the bar mitzvah, but very smart young boy. So when it's come to Maaseh Kinyanim, to do all kind of different transactions, there is a notion among the rabbis that if he's a smart boy, he can do Maaseh Kinyanim, but excluded exchange, not Kinyan Chalifin. How come? So Rabbi Ber explained it from Reb Chaim, who explained that Rambam beautifully. And he said, you know, when you have Kinyan Agbaha, uplifting, or Meshicha, all this type of Kinyanim, you have Maaseh Fizi, you have physical action of pulling, of lifting, versus Chalifin is something different. Because in Chalifin you have the symbolic act, which you need to have a very deep, mature adult understanding that you exchange in kind of barter, and that's not by any means someone who below than bar mitzvah can take. As we said, that it's very different than all the other kinyanim, because all the others is just the physical act of lifting or pulling, and the chalifin he used, you need to have a machshava mele'ah, you need to have full mature adult level of comprehension, and that is ineffective if it's a young boy that not reached the age of bar mitzvah.